So I want to distinguish five core cultural rights that citizenship requires. Rights of information, rights of knowledge, rights of deliberation, rights of representation, and rights of participation. Information rights. Firstly, citizens are entitled to comprehensive and disinterested information about current events and conditions, and particularly about the actions, motivations and plans of all those institutions, both governmental and corporate, with significant power over their life chances and their living conditions. But information itself doesn't confer empowerment. You could watch the news 24 hours a day for the rest of your life and still not understand why the world is like it is. That's why I work in a university and not in a news organisation. Universities are not information institutions, they're knowledge institutions. Information is useless unless you also have rights to knowledge. Knowledge consists of those interpretive frameworks that convert information into explanations, that identify causes, that highlight unnoticed links and connections, that clarify how particular decisions will impact on people's lives. So knowledge rights are about putting things in patterns, making connections, suggesting explanations, making sense of what is going on. But because in modern societies there is never only one explanation or one pattern, that all of those are fiercely contested, the third set of rights are absolutely crucial, deliberative rights. That is, citizens have to have access to forums in which the merits of competing accounts can be debated in a serious-minded way. Now, deliberation, the concept of deliberation, has been central to contemporary theories of democracy. And one of the most influential figures in putting that case has been the German philosopher Jürgen Habermas. He distinguishes something he calls the political public sphere, which he identifies with all of those places where issues connected with the practice of the state, as he puts it, are discussed. So public broadcasting would be part of the political public sphere for Habermas. But there's a problem with the way he puts this argument. In his original book, The Structure and Transformation of the Public Sphere, which he published at the beginning of the 1960s, before social movements really began to gather momentum, he identifies another public sphere, which he calls the literary public sphere, because he's writing primarily about the 19th century, which he sees as centred on popular fiction. And he says the point of that sphere, that's where people go to find out about themselves and to find out about other people. That's where they go to take imaginative journeys into what it might be like to be somebody else. But he doesn't think of that as being part of the political public sphere. Political public sphere is about the serious business of public issues and governmental decision-making. This is a very dangerous separation, and it's been very dangerous for public broadcasting. You can see why it's dangerous if you begin to read some of the policy documents produced by neoliberal economists. One of the best examples of this is a British government document that was commissioned by Mrs. Thatcher, produced by a panel chaired by one of our most famous neoliberal economists, Professor Alan Peacock. That concluded that all of the BBC services in future should be sold on subscription, should be fully commercialised. If people wanted to watch that stuff, fine, let them pay £5 or 10 quid or whatever, no problem. They had the sovereign right not to watch the BBC if they didn't like it. But then they recognise, as they put it, that there are some types of programmes, and I'm quoting, which are unlikely to be commercially self-supporting in the view of broadcasting entrepreneurs, but which are necessary to citizenship and therefore might require some public subsidy. The list is very interesting. It's headed by news, current affairs and documentaries, and it includes critical and controversial programmes covering everything from the appraisal of commercial products to politics, ideology, philosophy and religion. So they conclude that public broadcasting, that's what it should do. It should be part of Habermas's political public sphere. And they conclude, of course, that commercial broadcasters should be released from having to do these very expensive things. They can get on with game shows, soap operas and all the rest of it. There's a real difficulty with that. A very simple logical difficulty. A very wonderful book by American political theorist called Noel McPhee was just published. She says, if that was true, why would you bother to enter deliberation at all? If you already know what you want, and Habermas assumes that you do, why would you get involved with deliberation? You get involved with debate. Debate involves pushing a position, defending it, and trying to beat the other side down. Deliberation is something quite different. Deliberation is primarily about listening, not about speaking. It's about being willing to let go of your position, willing to go over to the other side, to understand where people are coming from, and to come to a genuine consensus or a genuine provisional settlement across those borders. It's not about defeating people, it's about cooperating with them. So where do the imaginative resources to do that come from? I would argue they come precisely from fiction, from comedy, from entertainment, because it's in those parts of broadcasting that we make those imaginative walks. And if we cease to do that, if public broadcasting ceases to encourage people to do that, then it does not provide fully for deliberative rights. It has to provide not only forums for discussion, but it has to provide the resources that allow people to enter those discussions with respect for other people's positions. Now that brings us to two very important issues. The question of representation. I want to argue that representation and participation have been the Achilles heel of public broadcasting. Representation in English carries two different senses, both of which are very important. On the one hand, we talk of representations, meaning the way we talk and picture things in different cultural forms and genres. But representation is also